Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Welcome to this episode of the Note Close Show. As always, Scott Carson, excited to be here with you today. Hopefully, you had a great weekend. Mondays in the office here. Hopefully, you don't have a case of the Mondays on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday, whenever you're listening to this episode. But excited to be here today. And I thought I would talk today a little bit about the most impactful books, or the books that had the biggest impact on my life as an entrepreneur, the ones that have really. When I was sitting here thinking about this topic this morning, a lot of people are like, the five most impactful books or the books that have made the most amount a difference in my life. And I kept adding books to it. So I'm gonna do with a little Feng Shui. I'm gonna stick with a very positive number of 8 because 8's one of my favorite numbers. Hence today's top 8 books. And I love all these. And I started thinking about the books that I recommend the most out to people out there, the people that ask me, okay, Scott, what's the book that you're reading now? And I'm reading A Million Followers right now, which is it's a great book, but it's not the top 8 as of this point. I'm constantly reading. I've got quite a bit of books here on my bookshelf here. I got a bunch at the house as well too. And I think books are a great way, as our buddy Greg Reid is famous for saying, leaders are readers. And we're constantly reading in a variety of different ways. But I started thinking back about what books, because I've read a lot. I've always been a big reader. Read a lot of books in high school and junior high and stuff like that. I mean, during the summers, I would go through the whole Hardy Boys series, the Nancy Drew series. Those are great books for kids out there these days. Going to the library with a library card, checking out 5 or 6 books, bringing them back to the hardware store that my dad ran in the house and reading those books, going back in another week or 2 weeks later and swapping them out for 5 more. So I'm a big fan of books. I'm a big fan of what hits me most of the time now is motivation, business books, things like that have helped my business. And when you think about the fact that Warren Buffett reads on an average of 4 to 6 hours a day, you should give some thought to this. So these 8 will probably not surprise many people. You've probably heard of them. And this is not meant to be a regurgitation of somebody else's stuff, but I wanted to share kind of the impact of mine. And what I would really love is if you're listening to this, taking a second, going to our Facebook profile, watching this on Facebook or watching this on Instagram, or listening to this, drop me a line with what your favorite book is. What's your top 2 or 3 if you want to, what you like. I'd love to hear that stuff, and we'll work on a surprise for many of you. So first and foremost, one of the ones, the books that really made the biggest impact in my life was Rich Dad Poor Dad. Like many other real estate investors, entrepreneurs, Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki and Sharon Lechter, who co-authored it, made a big impact to me. And I can remember sitting on my couch here, kind of a new kid out of college, graduated, recently married, reading Rich Dad Poor Dad on the couch on a Saturday, Sunday, and not being able to put it down. And how it really awakened some of the things in my mind. Now, I've always considered myself a hard worker. Always did a really good job. The jobs most of the time, about 95% of the time, I think we take about 5% to slack off. I always prided myself on being a good employee. But it was that book, and I think maybe my entrepreneurial raising, my parents being entrepreneurs, business owners, and that kind of really drove a lightning rod through me and realizing, hey, I need to focus on something else. And that has led to me looking for entrepreneurial spirit of things. I think many people do that. I think it leads to a lot of people doing things as far as, trying to do something on a side hustle, whether it's, selling vitamins, drawing circles, doing Amway or Quickstar, or some other multi-level thing. A lot of people do a lot of things to pay the bills, whether it's wraps or vitamins or whatever it might be. These days it's HGH cream and a variety of different things. But that book really helped lead the way to a lot of things. And the next book that really kind of was a next book in that, which was mentioned obviously, and that was Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. So I read Think and Grow Rich at least probably once a year, at least for the last 20 years. It's an easy read, still very, very beneficial for anybody out there. It's one of the books that we give away a lot. Whenever I go to Half Price Books just down the street here, I'm constantly looking to see if there's any of those available, and I'm usually grabbing 3 or 4 of them off the shelf and taking them with me because it's something I usually end up giving away to somebody. Usually, high school, college kid, I usually like to give away. My employees have full access to our library and stuff like that. They can take whatever they want to with them and bring it back. Think Grow Rich, I just like to give it away. Hey, We bought it. Give it to somebody else who you think will make an impact with it. And it's just still very, very beneficial to helping you identify that, hey, if you want to you want to get ahead in life, you can't be doing the same old. And it's the biggest thing that comes around with it is the fact of the mastermind principle that Napoleon Hill talked about and how effective it is. And it's just an amazing book. It comes down to it. I know it's usually a top 3, top 4 for most of my friends and entrepreneurs out there. Next one I would say is probably just as impactful for me. Would be, you're going to laugh at this, but How to Master the Art of Sales by Tom Hopkins. I loved Tom's story when I read that book. It was given to me. I remember who gave me a copy of it, or I bought it, and I read it, and I realized something in it. With his story in the book, how he started off as a new real estate agent and how he worked his way and how he had to go to his first listing appointment on his bicycle wearing his band uniform, and how it was just a comedy of errors, but he still succeeded. But I think that's a very important principle that most of us need to realize, is that we all start doing the same thing. We all put our pants on one leg at a time. We all start off brand new, and you just are, it's up to you. It's totally up to you to overcome those obstacles. It's totally up to you to master the art of sales. It's not be anything easy. It's going to take a little bit of work on your part to master yourself, to master your craft. And I think so many people get sick and tired of not having any patience, that they don't take the time. They constantly bounce to something else. And so that's the important thing. I think people need to realize that if you can take the time, it's been around for 20 plus years. I had the good chance of meeting Tom Hopkins one time in Austin, Texas. I've talked about that in a previous episode. And so that was one of the most important things that came out to me, is I got a chance to meet him and spend almost an hour with him one-on-one at a time that was really difficult in my life. Going through a tight spot, a low spot, finances weren't doing well. Things weren't going well at the time. And when I had a chance to meet Tom Hopkins, it really changed. It was I would say one of the most impactful moments of my life to this point. Okay. Now, about the same time, a guy here in Austin came out with a book called The Millionaire Real Estate Investor, Gary Keller. Maybe you're familiar with him. He also wrote The Millionaire Real Estate Agent, which is a great book as well. I've also read that book, even though I'm not an agent. I think it's a phenomenal book. What's interesting about the Millionaire Real Estate Investor is he talked about real estate investing in the front end side, and the second half and is all about he interviewed a bunch of other investors. And this is pre-2008. Okay, so we keep in mind, this is pre the downturn. Well, if you go back into that, I had a chance to meet some of those real estate investors in there. I had a chance to meet them whether I was in Houston or Dallas at other events. And unfortunately, many of them lost their shirts. Many of them had rental portfolios and other things like that, that just absolutely, they bombed. Unfortunately, things went south for them. And that's an unfortunate thing. It went south for them, and they either had to do something else, get out of business. One of the guys I actually looked up to in Houston, I had a chance to meet him. He ended up going into social media and running a marketing company. He had this huge portfolio that just went south. And so the lesson that I learned from it more than anything else is looking back at it afterwards. I was excited about it, a chance to meet and pick the brains, but also learn that not everything is always going to be rosy. Not everything is going to be perfect. And so you have to make sure and plan for the goods, the good ups and the downs as well. Okay. So Millionaire Real Estate Investor. Another one that is very important to me that I read about the same time and have continued to read it several times is The E-Myth by Michael Gerber. The E-Myth and The E-Myth Revisited. Great books by Michael Gerber talking about how us as entrepreneurs struggle with the 3 hats that we constantly have. Not everything is rosy. I mean, the most successful entrepreneurs are the ones that can focus on the forward thinking aspect of their business, what they're in, and then being able to delegate the other 2 hats of research and development, and then also customer service. Because I think a lot of entrepreneurs, when we get into things, we get excited. We're all pumped up, we're moving forward, but then we're not such good in paperwork or the little details after it. I know that I struggle with some of those things, and I have to outsource those things because I'm not going to sit back and take the time for me individually go back in and figure out my books. I'm not going to take the time to go back and figure that. That's why we have that's why I have somebody that handles that stuff for the office, because I know what my strengths are, I know what my weaknesses are, and you need to be focusing on your strengths. Okay, either outsource or delegate the weaknesses to somebody in your staff or a vendor to help you keep going forward, because that's where so many entrepreneurs get burnt out. They try to do it all themselves. Yes, we're all visible control freaks. And the thing you got to keep in mind is, hey, you're just one man or one woman. Learn what you do what you're doing, do what you do best, and try to outsource the rest if you can. So that's the E-Myth and the E-Myth Revisited are phenomenal books for you to take a look at. Highly recommend it. Got a chance to meet Michael Gerber at an event a while back as well too. Nice guy, and knows his stuff there. The next two books I'm going to talk about here, I'll start with the first one, is Jab, 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 Right Hook. That's by Gary Vaynerchuk. Every 30-something male's man crush. Okay. Taught a lot about, getting your message out in a noisy social media market. I still think it's a phenomenal book for those that are transitioning from a full-time job or career into entrepreneurship, whether it be in real estate investing or something else. Making sure to take the time to read that book probably once, and then going back and listening and read it again twice 6 months later. There's so much great information in it that many people, I think it's easy, especially if you're brand new, to go back and gloss over things that you may not understand, you may not be using, you may be new to social media. It's a very, very valuable book. Jab, 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 Right Hook. Got a boxing glove on the front. Gary Vaynerchuk out of New York has done a phenomenal job. One of the top social media personalities, I guess you could say, on there, or icons out there. He's done an amazing job growing VaynerMedia, Wine Library TV, and really done some amazing things out there. Part of seeing him do things on Wine Library TV is part of the reason it led to me doing so much video early on, seeing and said, well, this guy's chewing on rocks and tasting wine and spitting it out, telling you like it or he dislikes it, and just being his honest F-bombing self. I sure as heck can do some amazing things on video. I can do some things. And so that's kind of a very, very important book, I think, for many, many people. It's a little bit bigger than the others. I mean, it's taller, meant to stand out a little bit, but you can get it at any Barnes & Noble still. Occasionally I'll find them at half price books as well. And I'm glad to grab a couple of those anytime I see those too, because they're valuable enough to give away to our students and other people out there as well. Another one, which is probably an easier read than most of these others, is a book called Tribes. And Tribes is written by a guy named Seth Godin, bald-head guy, colorful glasses. Seth is one of my favorite authors. Also one of the guys I love to listen to the most. I had a chance to listen to him at the Infusionsoft conference a few years ago in Phoenix, and followed him online and a variety of different things. Tribes talks about how everybody has a tribe, whether it's our friends, our families, our coworkers, our college buddies, our drinking buddies, our peers of the offices. People we do yoga with, people we're at the gym. We all have tribes, and everybody's looking for leadership. Everybody out there is looking for somebody to lead us, and it could be lead us in a variety of ways. Maybe it is the downward dog at the yoga studio, or hey, being the boss and leading your employers, or leading the PTA, or leading your kids, or just being a leader in the community. We all have different tribes, and you're either a leader or you're a follower. And in some tribes, as we all belong to different tribes, some tribes we are the leaders, other times we're the follower. The thing you got to realize is everybody is looking for leadership, and it's up to you to lead. Because if you don't lead, they'll listen to somebody else. And there's a line from The American President, the movie, with Michael Douglas, talks about, in the absence of true leadership, people will listen to the loudest person. And it just that quote sticks with me, stuck with me since I've read that book. And I love reading that book too. I think it's a phenomenal book. I recommend it all the time. But if you're coming from an introverted, you can be a leader being an introvert, is what I want to say. If you're coming from an introvert aspect of things, you're not comfortable doing it, you can still lead in your actions. You can still lead in what you're doing marketing wise. You can still lead in your actions and how you work with other people. You don't always have to be the local loudest person, but you can still be the one that's providing good quality info, good quality leadership. And I think that's a valuable valuable book. I think as for new entrepreneurs, I think it's one of the most valuable things, especially if you're coming out of a career path or making a change and you're becoming more of an entrepreneur or solopreneur, business owner. Tribes, I think, is one thing you have to realize. We all have tribes, and you just have to get out to them. And that's why I think jab, 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 right hook, and tribes really kind of entangle each other as two of the best books you could read as an entrepreneur outside the traditional, like I said, the Rich Dad Poor Dad, the Think and Grow Rich. I think there's a lot of great action items in there that can really help you grow yourself and help you grow your business and help you really take on the right mindset as a marketing entrepreneur. Okay. Let me go back through here. I'm just, we talked about Rich Dad Poor Dad, one of the first most important ones. Think and Grow Rich, How to Master the Art of Sales with Tom Hopkins, Millionaire Real Estate Investor with Gary Keller, Jab, 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 Right Hook with Gary Vaynerchuk, Tribes by Seth Godin, Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, The E-Myth by Michael Gerber. The last one is a book that I absolutely adore. It's probably the book that we've given away the most. We bought tons and tons and tons of copies of this. It's Outwitting the Devil. Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill. It was written back in 1938. Was not released. Many of you probably heard the story that his wife, Mrs. Hill, did not want to release the story because back in 1938, it would be a bit more controversial than it would be now. It's a story basically where Napoleon Hill is interviewing the devil, talking with the devil about what makes the devil successful in the world. And the devil talks about how he's able to get people to drift, to get those that would be successful to not be successful by having them focus on other things, by drifting away from their main cause, by getting out of their lanes, by just being unfocused, chasing multiple rabbits. And the people that are the most successful in life are the ones that make the most positive impact in life because they're focused. They're not drifting. They say no to a lot of things. They have sole focus going forward and get rock and rolling. I think everybody drifts. Let's face it. There's a lot of temptation out there, and temptation is not always. Well, some people would say it's a devil, but by temptation I mean that there's always, hey, I want to start this, or I want to do this, I want to do this. I went time years ago. I was in North Carolina on a coaching call with a dentist, and the dentist, pretty successful dentist in a small North Carolina town, but he also raced racehorses. He also wanted to raise chickens. He wanted to be a note investor. He wanted to do a lot of other real estate stuff, and he was all over the place. And I went out and tried to spend time with him. Like, listen, you're going to have to focus on some things. Oh, he also had a couple kids. I hate to say this, but the kids were the worst brats, loud, ran all over the place. There was no type of organization to it. And I'm like, you have to be focused. If you're letting your kids run wild and you're doing all this stuff and you're all over the place, there's no way you're going to be able to focus on real estate. Something has got to give. And that book was I think it was the first time I gave a book away. I sent the book to him, and he came back and he sent me that letter back. He said, hey, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Yes, I know I need to focus a little bit more on some things. And it was written, like I said, not released. And Don Green, the CEO of the Napoleon Hill Foundation, I heard the story from Mr. Green himself and Greg Reid, who's does a lot with the Napoleon Hill Foundation, with Think and Grow Rich, Stickability, Think and Grow Rich, 3 Feet from Gold. That would be my number 9 book, Think and Grow Rich, 3 Feet from Gold. But talking about how then he found the manuscript and then gave the manuscript to Sharon Lechter, co-author of Rich Dad Poor Dad, never read other books. And Sharon rewrote the manuscript, but left it pretty much the same, but just simply added in paragraphs and things, how she thought Napoleon will think of the story today. And it's an amazing book. Everybody we've ever given to is like, man, it really is impactful. There's some really like lightning rods that drive home. And I remember reading that book the first time and like, oh my gosh, like literally circling things and highlighting passages in the book. And I've read that book so many times. Like I said, we give a lot of them away out there, but that would be really, I wanted to save that one for number 8 or number 1 if we did a countdown for the most part, because it was really impactful. Not only reading the book, but then also having the opportunity through Greg Reid, my buddy, out in San Diego, to actually have a chance to meet Sharon and hang with Sharon and talk with her about the book, talk with her about Rich Dad Poor Dad. And Sharon is one of the most kindest and giving individuals out there. It just has a big heart, not only for entrepreneurs and doing the right thing, but also financial literacy. She's got a huge movement going on in Arizona and different parts of the country, trying to help get kids and everybody else financially literate, because that's one of the biggest hurdles to wealth is if you're not financially literate, you're illiterate and you get stuck in a crappy paycheck to paycheck and rat race life. And so getting a chance to meet with her, I was very honored that Sharon had me reach out. She asked me to reach out to a close friend of hers to help her, to help them, and not Sharon, but help her friend purchase the second mortgage on their house, not Sharon's house, the other person's house, because they were in a bind. They were upside down, like many people in Arizona. And I was able to reach out and help negotiate that down on behalf of her friend. And I felt very honored that Sharon would trust that information with me and be able to talk with that. So that was, one of the great things about that was I had a chance to meeting Sharon, who kind of rewrote the book and brought it into real world here. There's a movie out. It's in the works right now, Outwitting the Devil. Hopefully they'll get it out over the next year or two. But those books, I think, books have a big impact on it. And as Charlie Tremendous Jones is famous for saying, in 5 years from now, you'll be the same person except for the people you meet and the books that you read. In our books that we read, whether it's as I say, it's a toilet book, it's a one-stop reading, or it's a book on an airline, or it's a book that I've written and given away, or it's somebody else's book. I think anytime you can listen to somebody and really listen, by listening to somebody's theories, you're really listening to what you're reading. You're really reading, you're imbibing it. You have to take that time to listen into it and realize, hey, it may not always be what you want to hear. But sometimes it's important to hear what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. Nobody wants us to have yes men and yes women and things that we read all the time. I watch some news. I don't watch CNN or Fox News or things like that. I watch a lot of the comedians on both sides of the landscape, what's going on right now. And it's funny, I was watching John Oliver last night, and I don't agree with all the things that John Oliver says. I find it comedic, some things like that. And I think there's both sides are right and both sides are wrong. I think that what we have to do as individuals is to listen to both sides and come up with our own story, come up somewhere in the middle. And that's the same thing with books. Books are great for you to come up with your own theory, taking what I oftentimes are a lot smarter people than myself, and taking the time to listen to what they have to say, reflecting upon it. Hey, do I agree with this? Do I disagree with this? Why do I disagree with this? What are the valid points? And then taking what you learn and applying it in real life. Now, it's not always the easiest thing to apply what you learn in real life. Sometimes we come from a spot where, hey, we're struggling, okay? Struggling to make that next step, struggling in a job that we dislike, struggling to find our voice, okay? Struggling, struggling in a variety of ways, financially, emotionally, relationship-wise. And sometimes you've got to take and pull your own head out of your orifice and reflect back and read a little bit. And sometimes you just have to take the time to do that. I love to hear what your top three are out there. I see Laura Blunk's commented on our Facebook feed. She goes, her top three are how to win friends and influence people, psycho-cybernetics, and outwitting the devil. One taught me about dealing with others. One taught me about dealing with myself. And one taught me about dealing with priorities and focus. I like that, Laura. Good stuff. Psycho-cybernetics. I like that one. I've not read that one. How to Win Friends and Influence People. It's a phenomenal book. It's on my bookshelf. Great book. Great book out there. All three of those. I've not read the middle one. I want to take a look at it. Okay. All right. Good stuff there. But we have so many people have different books that we love, right? We've all got different books that have impacted us in one way or another. I always try to get a book when I'm looking at books, whether it's in the airport, which seems to be a lot of the time, or half price if I got 5 minutes while I'm getting my mail, or Barnes and Nobles if I really am trying to find something. So I always try to find something that I can add that's going to benefit me in some sort of fashion. I don't read a lot of fiction, although I was a big fan of Stephen King books growing up. The Stand, The Stand was my favorite book for so long, but Dark Half, golly, I'm just thinking of so many things. The Shawshank Redemption, Carrie, Christine. I mean, I read so many of those Stephen King books growing up. It was a lot of fun. I thought it was a lot of fun. I dive into them, you get lost pretty fast. But after a while, I was like, we evolve. I think our taste evolves in what we read and what we put into our mind. And I think you have to realize these days, I really am a big believer that podcasts are really truly some of the last, books and podcasts, I think are two of the last really freedom of speech avenues that we have out there. You can't really go on YouTube and do a lot of stuff like you used to. There are a little bit more stuff, especially Facebook, any type of thing political or even not political, they'll pull it off there for you. So I think books and being able to podcast and provide that information out there is a valuable thing. I love, I haven't been a big fan of audiobooks. I still like I want to feel it in my hand, the grittiness of it. I want to be able to turn it. I want to be able to mark it up. I can't do that on an electronic screen and be able to use my tablet or my phone effectively in the future. But that's one of the biggest things I like is being able to do that. And that's also something valuable to give on to somebody. I'm headed to an event in September in San Diego, and then reached out to the promoter, the person in charge of the event, and there'll be 100, 150 people there. And a big chunk of us that are attending have books or have written books or have books that are coming out. And so I think we're going to be putting together a nice book signing for everybody there where, everybody gives copies away. And I think that's a really cool thing for everybody to have is taking some books. I love that about Secret Knock and my buddy Greg Reid. He brings in a lot of people that have amazing books. And every year I get an Outwitting the Devil or The Wish Man from Frank Shankowitz, which is now out in the movie theaters. These 8 books, if you really want to understand where somebody's thinking, ask them their top 7 or 8 books and the books that they give away. I think books are great. A lot of us want to have big bookshelves and stuff like that. Oh yeah, I've read that one. I have many leather bound books. I'm an important person, but I'm a big advocate of giving books away. I just think it's one of the better things you can do, especially if something's important to you and that person you're talking with is important, or you think they're going to be important and you want to help them in some sort of form of fashion. I think you got to pass books on. I think you got to give them, because they don't do you any good or anybody else just sitting on a shelf. Unless, of course, they're a collector's item. There's some first editions. I guess you don't want to give those away. But going back here, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, one of the, I think, what is it, one of the top 10 or 20 books out there. Definitely Think You Are Rich, one of the top 3 by Napoleon Hill. And there's so many books out there, How to Master the Art of Sales. A lot of people who's Tom Hopkins? I've never heard of him. And Tom's kind of faded off a little bit as he's gotten older and pretty much retired. He's still speaking a little bit. I think he still speaks every once in a while. Sales has changed so much with the impact of social media. But if you take How to Master the Art of Sales and combine that with the tribes and the Jeb Right Hood aspect of things, I think you're going to come out sitting pretty well. The Millionaire Real Estate Investor by Gary Carroll, I think he needs to update it. I think he needs to update it with new profiles and new individuals on that aspect of it. And that's kind of been the theme for our book, Loan Tales, is the similar thing, but it's based on where we're going with the note business, where the note business is, and focusing on people who have profiles and are doing some things new and existing out there, investors out there who are doing some things. Okay. What I would love to hear from you guys that are listening to this or watching this or, driving, listening to the radio, I'd love for you, like I said, drop me an email, scott@weclosenotes.com. Tell me what your top 3 books are. If you want to give me more than 3, that's fine, but your top 3 books would be great. We'll add those to our blog. We'll add obviously links to our blog on the website for these 8 books as we upload it to our website. Once again, you can always catch all replays and things like that on our website, or by going to weclosenotes.com, checking out the blogs or the actual podcast articles. But when I got into, I think a lot of people have a big goal of wanting to write a book. I want to write a novel. I want to write something that shares my thoughts. And it's gotten easier and easier and easier these days to write books. than ever was before. We're so blessed to do that. And for me, writing my book was very extremely easy. What I did with my book is basically I jumped online. It's easier for me to tell stories via webinar versus me to sit down and write. Now, don't get me wrong, throughout college and high school, I consider myself a pretty good writer back in the day. So my professors told me, had a couple books, a couple of chapters and some other things published in college and other things. I enjoy writing, and when I really do focus on it, that muscle, I can flex that muscle. But I think with video in these days, it's become a lot easier to put pen technically to paper. I should say word to paper versus pen to paper. Taking the time to record you telling a story or two, or talking about something or a subject that you're confident in or an expert in, is so much easier these days than trying to write it down. And that's what I did. 73 pages of me sharing nuggets and stories about the note business and real estate and things like that into a book. Try not to repeat myself. I was pretty good having an editor that went through that. I've seen some books, people write some books and they're constantly repeating themselves. And at the end of the book, I'm like, all I heard was the same story like 5 or 6 times. Where's the meat? It's like that old Wendy's commercial. Where's the meat? Okay. Well, we tried to provide a lot of great nuggets in our book, but that's what we did. Very easy. Record a couple hours of video of me sharing stories and nuggets and teaching, taking videos of our trainings and transcribing them via Rev, uploading them, going to Upwork.com, finding a somebody, to take that and edit it and put it all together. We're doing that right now with Loan Tales. We're excited about that. And then putting it into a manuscript, transcript that makes sense. It sounds the same. It sounds universal. It flows great. And then design a book cover and then getting it ready for Amazon, which is not that difficult to do. Self-publishing. These days, you can all do that. And it's not that difficult to do. You never know who you're going to talk to. I see so many people have books, and I love reading books. But it's different. It's not the same type of business that it was. You're not going to go get rich selling books these days, unless you're in rare air. I was talking with Jack Canfield at an event, Chicken Soup for the Soul, phenomenal book series in Houston a couple years ago. He was the guest speaker at the the Lifestyles convention, and I had a chance to visit with him for about 15 minutes during his book signing and talking. And he was talking about the story that he wanted his first ever book deal. He wanted to have a $1 million check written, and he wrote a check out and put it beside his bed, put it on his ceiling. So that was the first thing he saw before he went to bed, and the first thing he saw in the morning. But the last thing he saw before he went to bed. You get what I'm saying? And eventually ended up happening. And I asked him how much difference is these days. He's like, Scott, it's so much different. You really have to take things to a whole different level. If you don't have a following, you don't have somebody, a tribe out there, or raving fans, he goes, it would be a different story today. It would be a totally different thing that I would do today versus what I did years ago. And that was important to me. Just listening to him, and I've got so many of Jack's books here at the house. He's just a great writer. One of my top favorite writers as well for a variety of reasons. But the thing I want you to know, everybody, these books, many of you that have been around me for a while, have listened to me or heard me or been to students, you've heard me talk about pretty much almost every one of these books. And part of as I listen to myself, as I hear myself talking, I hear the internal dialogue between my ears, I hear these books. I hear these 8, 9, 20 books on a constant basis. And I think we all do that. And the idea is that you are, whatever you're reading or watching or listening to, you're programming your brain. And our brain is a very programmable computer. It's a programmable piece of software. You can put, in each book you read is a bit of code or software that goes into your brain. It changes the chemistry of your brain. If you look at what people read and the actions they're taking, if you're stressed out, your chemistry, one thing in your brain versus if you're in a good spot. If you're on vacation, relaxed versus stressed out at work, it's 2 different types of things going on in your brain. And what you have to realize, I think that books help us cope with those the most. Books, if you can get in a quiet spot, like I read this weekend for the first time in a few weeks. I didn't even take any books on the cruise. I thought I would spend some time reading on the cruise, and I didn't. We had a lot of stuff that we did. I'm not traveling, but the thing I want you to realize, everybody out there, is if you have a negative outlook, if you're not liking where you're at, I think one of the easiest things that you can do to help program yourself is to help you overcome those obstacles is look at what you're inserting into your computer. What code are you uploading? What software are you uploading? Steph likes to make the joke that I like to watch a lot of violent stuff on TV. I'll shoot them up or action. It's just, that's the thing I like. But I also like watching, biographies. I love watching history because I think history repeats itself. I was watching something this weekend about the honey badger on TV. It was quite interesting. I think it was that Friday night I was watching that. But what I want you to get at, guys and gals, is take the time, listen. Take the time to listen to what your thoughts are, and reevaluate where you're programming. If you, I've had some friends that were constantly negative, and I paid attention. They hadn't read books in years. They're constantly playing violent video games, and I think their programming led to their outlook on life being negative. And if you're struggling with things, you're struggling with feeling things in a negative way, your books can help you out with so much. Deepak Chopra, we were able to chance to see him speak here in Austin a few months ago. Got his book on self-healing. And it's a phenomenal book. It has a lot of great, impactful points. All right. It's got a lot of impactful things that has led to me making some changes in what I'm putting in my diet and what I'm putting into my body to help me overcome some things. All because of book, all because of thoughts and listening and identifying nuggets that do that. And I know we've got a little bit away from the top 8 impactful books, the most impactful books of what we have, but I only say this because I would highly encourage you. I think that we need more people to turn the TV off and read a little bit more these days. I think we need to turn off the CNN and the Fox News and spend more time listening to real thoughts, listening and reading things. Yeah, video is where it's at. Kevin Harrington from Shark Tank, one of the first Sharks, one of the most impactful thoughts was listening to him years ago at an event talk about how video is where everything's at. And I think we can all agree to that. Video is where it's at. If you're wanting to do something and launch some things, great, video is where it's at. If you're wanting to use your video to share nuggets, use your video, the nuggets you've learned from books in your videos to make that happen, and you can be impactful. That's helps you grow your tribe. That's helping you with your jab, right hook, to realize everything is kind of connected. When I sat down and wrote this out, these chapters did not, surprise, or these books did not surprise me. I think for many of you, it's not going to surprise you as well. Especially Think and Grow Rich. I know we have probably given away hundreds of copies of those books, and it's been one of the most impactful books in all the note camps and the virtual workshops that we've taught, or the classes that I've taught over the years of giving books away every time we have something. I'm a bigger fan of giving books away than t-shirts. But do yourself a favor, make a list of the books. Think about it for a second. What are the books that have made the most impact in your life? Write it down. And how many of those would you give away? How many of those would you be willing to give to somebody to help them on their journey, to help them on their path to success? Think about that. If you can do anything for somebody now, between now and December, give away a book. Give them a book. There's a half price or discount bookstore in your nearby. Stop by there today. See what's in there. I like going in. That's what I do. I hit 1 or 2 areas. I pull those books. Boom. I'll spend $100 in there. And most of the time I'll give them away. There's 1 or 2 that I'm looking for. I'll keep myself. But for the most part, I give away a lot of books. And I think it's a very impactful thing you can have on somebody's life, to give them a book to read. Okay? So I encourage you to do that, everybody. Encourage you to go out there today, take some action, carve out an hour or two. For many of you guys and gals out there, we're between basketball season now over. We have baseball season basically going on. We're not even to the fall classic of the All-Star game. The NFL, college football doesn't start unless you're watching the Grey Cup, CFL. Take some time, put to good use. Get that muscle in your noggin working for you. Get that muscle working and thinking. And I guarantee, if you're struggling, I think the answer is in a book. And the answer out there is out there for whatever you're focused on, whether it's Facebook ads. Nick, let's Where's Nicholas's book at? It's good. Nicholas Kuzmich on Give is a great book to read on Facebook advertising. 1 million followers I'm following by Kane is good. David Corbin and Illuminate, if you've got issues, is a great book to read. I could go on and on and on and on out here of all the books that I think would be beneficial for you. And that's why I try to find something. Don't have to be too big. We're not talking about there. It's the Gutenberg Bible for you to read, but stuff that you can read in a day or two, the worst, and then go back and reread it again. Go back and look at your notes. Always try to carry an index card. When I'm reading a book, I try to have an index card somewhere nearby where I can make my notes on here versus the book if I can. But I leave that index card in the book so that I can then take the notes out and identify, okay, here's the biggest points. Here's the biggest things going back in. What I need to focus on, is this helpful, or is this something I need to focus on later on in life? So, everybody, hopefully you've got some books that you enjoy. You've read some things. If you're not a reader, I highly encourage you to pick up a book. Your imagination is so powerful and can make so many things happen. And I think it's one of the big things when people talk about, going and watching a movie that was based on a book. It's not like the book at all. The book is so more powerful than the movie is. Our imagination is so much stronger. And so go do it. Take the time, flex that muscle, get it working. And I think you'll like the outcome with it. But like I said, once again, Charles Tremendous Jones, I'd like to say, 5 years from now, the only thing that'll be different about you is the people that you meet and the books that you've read. So if you really want to change where you're going to be at in 5, 10 years, go read. Take the time, hour a day, 2 hours a day, 20 minutes before you go to bed is a great, great thing for you to do. Okay? Go out and make something happen, everybody. Enjoy it, and we'll see you all at the top.